Good evening. I just thought that before I go back to making audios, I'd make this video first as a getting back into making videos thing. And to fit with creepypasta like I've been doing, why don't I read some short ones for you tonight? You want some spooky bedtime stories? Okay. When you were little, did you ever download that Spooky Stories app? I remember doing so as a kid, and I would read them to my mom or my friends at sleepovers. So I think I'll read some from that. It should be nostalgic, at least for me. Unfortunately, a lot of these, if not all of them, don't have someone to credit for it. So, we had just moved into a little ranch house in the suburbs. Storybook neighborhood, quiet, friendly neighbors, picket fences, the whole 9 yards. Suffice it to say that this was supposed to be a new start for me, a recently single dad and my 3-year-old son, a time to move on from the previous year's drama and stress. I viewed the thunderstorm as a metaphor for this fresh start, one last show of theatrics before the dirt and grime of the past would be washed away. My son loved it anyway, even with the power out. It was the first big storm he'd ever seen. Flashes of lightning flooded the bare rooms of our house, imparting unpacked boxes with long creeping shadows, and he jumped and squealed as the thunder boomed. It was well past his bedtime before he'd finally settled down enough to go to sleep. The next morning I found him awake in bed and smiling. "I watched the lightning at my window," he proudly announced. A few mornings later, he told me the same thing. "You're silly," I said. "It didn't storm last night. You were only dreaming." "Oh." He seemed somewhat disheartened. I ruffled his hair and told him not to worry. There should be another storm soon. Then it became a pattern. He would tell me how he watched the lightning outside his window at least twice a week, despite there being no storms. Recurring dreams of that first memorable thunderstorm, I figured. It's easy to hate myself in hindsight. Everybody assures me there's nothing I could have done, no way I could have known. But I'm supposed to be the guardian of my child, and these are useless words of comfort. I constantly relived that morning, making my coffee, pouring milk over my cereal, and picking up the newspaper to read about the pedophile local authorities had just arrested. It was front-page stuff. Apparently this guy would select a young target, usually a boy, stake out their house for a while, and take flash photos of them through their window while they slept. Sometimes he did more. My stomach sank as the connection was made. At the time, it was merely something from a child's imagination. In retrospect, it is the scariest thing I've ever heard. About a week before the predator was caught, my son came up to me in his pajamas. "Guess what?" he asked. "What?" "No more lightning at my window." I played along. "Oh, that's nice. It finally died down, huh?" "No, now it's in my closet." I've yet to see the photos police have collected. That one's kind of dark. Do you remember stories about black-eyed children? I know it was kind of a trend, not even too long ago. But there were so many back in the early 2010s, 2012. This one is called Never Again. I was 17 when she came. I'd been living with my abusive mother for 17 long, painful years. It was around midnight, and my mother was already asleep, so when the 3 soft raps at the front door came, it was me who answered. An odd-looking little girl stood there, with cheeks pale and colorless, blonde hair and braided pigtails, pink dress torn a little at the hem, feet bare and turning slightly blue from the cold of winter, and black eyes. Fathomless, deep, black eyes. I quickly let her in, thinking of how horridly underdressed she was. It wasn't until later I'd wondered why she'd not been shivering, or even questioned as to why she was here in the first place. I got her into the living room, wrapped her little form in a thick afghan my grandmother had knitted. She held it, though it didn't seem to affect her, and I smiled. "What's your name, sweetie?" A long silence passed, in which she stared at me. I was beginning to be discomforted by her black gaze, when she parted her lips and spoke in a soft voice. "Lacey Morgan?" I nodded, smiling again. "You can stay here tonight, Lacey. I said, motioning to the couch. She curled up in a little ball, black eyes still on me, and I exited the room. That night, I slept soundly, not worrying about my mother beating me or the strange little girl on my couch. When morning came and I trudged into the kitchen, I was greeted with a coffee mug to the shoulder. I gave a feeble shout of pain, staring at my mother. "What the hell did you do? Why is there dirt on the couch?" she shouted, confusing me greatly. Upon investigating, I found that Lacey had vanished. The only proof she'd been there, some dirt that must have fallen off her dress or feet. I took responsibility, earning myself a strong hit to my cheek, and then left for school. While there, I heard something that sent chills through my spine. Lacey Morgan was found dead last night. I passed the day waiting for any more news on the subject, but found none. Upon arriving home, the news was broadcasting a live report on her, though. Lacey Morgan, 6 years of age, was reported dead at 7 last night. Her body was located in the backyard, buried there in her pink dress. So far, there has been no sign of her mother, Marissa Morgan, who is suspected to be the killer. Marissa has reportedly abused Lacey multiple times and may be responsible for her death. Suddenly, a picture of Lacey appeared on the screen. She appeared very close to how she had when I met her. Blonde hair and braids, pink dress, pale face. Only her cheeks had color, and her eyes were baby blue. To most, this would seem unimportant, but to me, it was. She died before arriving at my house, if what the newscaster said was true. Died hours before. I tried to play it off, going about my business. I went to bed early so as not to have to see my mother. It was around midnight when I awoke to cool fingers stroking the bruise on my cheek. I sighed, leaning into the small hand. "Never again," Lacey whispered before her hand vanished. Not 10 minutes later, I heard my mother screaming. I rushed into her bedroom, nearly fainting at what I saw. My mom was thrashing wildly on her bed, a small creature having buried its face into her chest. I could hear the sound of flesh tearing, and my mother's screaming increased in volume. I wished I hadn't gotten up. Later on, I'd tell myself I hadn't, but I had. So when Lacey pulled back from the gaping hole in my mother's chest cavity, I had a plain view of her razor-sharp teeth, glinting in the light, glinting with my mother's blood. She smiled innocently at me for a moment, before swiftly tearing out my mother's jugular. That time I did faint. When I came to, I was in my bed. I walked to my mom's room, morbid curiosity getting the best of me. Upon opening the door, I found the room empty. The bed was neatly made, as if my mom had left for work early. The only oddities were the dirty child footprints and the open window, showing that Lacey had in fact visited. I never saw my mother again, and I never missed her either. I eventually got married, and we had a child together. I named her Lacey. Recently, I noticed the neighbor's daughter has all sorts of scrapes and bruises on her arms. I started watching their home, and the other day I saw something odd. A little girl running barefoot through their backyard up to their back door. It was around midnight, so I couldn't be for sure, but I thought she met my eyes with her black ones, and I could swear she mouthed 2 words at me. Never again. Friday 13th, November 2015. At 3:42 p.m. GMT, it happened. The world descended into a sudden, complete darkness. Chaos ensued. In our little office on the 10th floor, we huddled together in that ominous pitch black, awaiting the light. There was a television in our break room, and someone found the remote control. Using the memory of our fingers, we managed to change the channel to news. For a long time, there was just silence. Then, through the seemingly endless dark, came a voice. A newsreader, bravely finding her desk and attempting to reassure her viewers, spoke to us. In her soft, trembling voice, they had no idea what was happening, but people needed to remain calm and keep together amid reports people are disappearing in the dark, wandering from their friends and family and becoming lost or finding danger. We spent the next 3 days in the office, finding our bearings in the dark and managing to eat and sleep in relative comfort, despite the feeling that we were frozen in some kind of alternate universe. Then, exactly 72 hours after the darkness came, it was gone. Our eyes burned from the sudden light, but we soon adjusted and agreed that we should, as a group, head downstairs and outside. Descending the stairs, a smell greeted us. Retching, I knew immediately what it was, and reluctantly turned the corner into the last turn of the stairwell, thinking perhaps someone had fallen down the stairwell and died from the injuries. I was wrong. I think she had been a woman, though I can't be sure. She had been flayed and gutted, though I don't know in which order. Every inch of her skin was missing, though her eyes and teeth remained, turning her corpse into a grinning, staring monster. I wasn't the only one who threw up. Needing to escape the sight, we burst through the main doors into the foyer and froze. Skinless bodies were strewn across the small foyer, almost 15 of them, by our reckoning from the brief look we had at them. We didn't intend to stay for long, but we found the foyer doors were locked and we couldn't break the glass. Someone, I don't remember who, had the idea of heading to the security room and seeing if we could radio for help. Picking our way past the bodies with churning stomachs, we found the security room open and the guard flayed inside. By mutual agreement, we heaved his body out and shut ourselves in. While one of the others tried to make contact, some of us started looking at security footage of the foyer from the last 3 days. We couldn't believe what we saw. It hadn't gone dark at all. We had gone blind, and while we were blind, they had come. Sinewy, smoky black shadows without faces, only eyes, strange, glowing eyes. They were flaying people and wearing their skin as a disguise. We turned into the CCTV on our floor and watched in horror as they walked among us, but chose none. To this day, I don't know why. At one point, they were gathered together, watching us, but soon after, they departed and caused havoc in an office on the floor above instead. We were soon rescued, but in the following weeks, the world descended into lunacy. Everyone knew about the flaying, about the imposters, but no one knew who was real and who wasn't until it was too late. Without trust, humans cannot survive side by side. I remained with 2 of my colleagues. Those I knew were not changed. We packed camping gear and decided to make our way to the wooded area outside of town to keep away from society as it became more and more volatile. We had it all worked out, and we had high hopes for the recovery of humanity. Then we woke up one morning, and we were blind again. 3 days later, the light came back, and I was with both of my friends and one body. I don't know which it is, but I'm sure it won't be long until we find out. And that was 3 of them. These are so nostalgic. I used to, whip this out at, sleepovers and stuff. And be like, guys, listen to this. Listen to this one. Look what I found. Just, dumb emo teen behavior. Well, I say teen, but I think I was, 10, maybe 12. But yeah. Are you comfortable? Let's see if we can tuck you in. There we go. Okay,